Many rockets were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome system. It stunned the world.
Last night, these skies were lit up with rockets after several hundred rockets were fired by the Hamas terrorists against Tel Aviv, Israel's most populous city. I can tell you personally, I spent the night in bomb shelters, in and out, with my children.
The violence in Gaza has its origins in a Palestinian neighborhood in East Jerusalem, a neighborhood called Sheikh Jarrah. It is located near Damascus Gate, one of the main gates in the walled city. This is what the neighborhood looks like right now. Israeli police have erected concrete barrier blocking the entrance to Sheikh Jarrah. This comes hours after Israeli police shot dead a Palestinian driver who crashed into a police roadblock. 6 officers were injured in the crash, triggering a fresh row in the area. Sheikh Jarrah has been the center of a long-running legal feud. The neighborhood is populated by Palestinians, but a legal challenge in the Israeli Supreme Court is seeking to evict these residents and bring in Israeli settlers. Some Israelis had in fact moved in even before the court verdict. Several Palestinian groups started protesting against the case. They argued that evictions in Sheikh Jarrah would have a domino effect. The verdict was scheduled for the 10th of May, but it was deferred to avoid a flashpoint. A new court session will be scheduled within 30 days. Israelis argues that Sheikh Jarrah belonged to Jews in East Jerusalem before the 1948 war. A lower court has already ruled in favor of evictions. There is a religious angle to all of this as well, especially this case. Sheikh Jarrah is home to the tomb of the ancient Jewish high priest Simon the Just. Ahead of the scheduled verdict, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan reached out to Israel. He expressed concern about the potential eviction of Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah. The sentiment was echoed by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The situation in the walled city has been tense since Ramadan from mid-April. Palestinians had been clashing every night with the Israeli police. They were prevented from gathering at the walled city after iftar, which is the end of the daytime fast. Palestinians perceive this as restrictions on their freedom to assemble. Israel argues the cops were there to maintain order. As the Israeli-Palestinian conflict dragged into the second week, WION has been bringing you ground reports from the heart of the conflict. Our correspondent Jody Cohen has been reporting from central Israel since the clashes began. As Israel geared up for the Jewish holiday of Shavuot, WION talked to citizens about the mood and situation right now in Israel. Take a look.
So I'm going to go just very locally to a couple of friends. I'm going in my car even though I could walk there, just because nobody's going out right now without calculating how long they've got to get to the nearest shelter and where could they go. So where I am now in central Israel, I would have about 90 seconds to get to a shelter. The people down south have as little as 5 seconds to get to a shelter, so they are staying literally in their apartments. But where I am, I have 90 seconds, so I'm going to drive round the corner to my friends, even though I could walk, just to get there quicker, so if a siren goes off, I can go into a shelter near there. So I'm here with my friend Marcel, and we are actually in their bomb shelter. They have a bomb shelter in their house as well. As you can see, the window is reinforced with like a steel door. This unfortunately didn't help an Israeli family the other day. A father and a son were in their bomb shelter, and some shrapnel managed to come through the steel door and the glass into the shelter. Marcel, how have things been like for you over the last few days?
We are extremely concerned about the situation in the country. We running to the bomb shelter is very scary, and you hear that siren wailing, and then you know that you have a very short amount of time to run to the bomb shelter. I think a lot about the Israelis that are living down south in the Ashkelon area, Ashdod, that are living along the Gaza Strip, and what that must be like, because they've been living with this their entire lives. And it must really be terrifying and very traumatic.
So there's been a growing movement, like a grassroots movement of Israeli Jews and Arabs reaching out to each other. And you attended a peace rally the other day. Can you tell us what that was like, what happened?
Sure. The peace rally was held at a major junction in central Israel. And it was attended, probably we started off with 100 people. We stood at this major junction holding signs. Our signs said, together we are against violence, and the signs were in Hebrew and in Arabic. We also chanted slogans like Jews and Arabs refuse to be enemies. And it people started joining us. I would say that there were probably about 350 people. And cars, like as they passed, they were honking their horns, agreeing with us. And many people actually just stopped and joined us. It was represented really well by Arab Israelis and by Jews from the area. As people heard, more people came. And it was really very peaceful. And I think it was a very strong message that we seek to live together in peace. And internally, we want our message to be that we stand together.
So I've got back okay, and it was interesting seeing the few cars on the road, but those who were on the road were driving faster than normal, obviously concerned to be close as possible to seeking shelter, seeking a stairwell somewhere, should more rockets be fired from Gaza into central Israel. This is Jodie Cohen reporting for WION from central Israel.
Continuous coverage of the clashes between Israel and Palestine. On your screens now are the visuals of a multi-story building and a tower collapsing in Gaza.
Hamas is firing more rockets into Israel's commercial heartland.
This is Jodie Cohen reporting for WION from central Israel.
Hostilities between Israel and Gaza continue to escalate, and in the latest, Israel says that it has killed a senior Palestinian militant commander in Gaza, as well as destroying nearly 15 kilometers of underground tunnels used by Hamas. The Israeli army said that on Monday, their jets targeted Hassam Abu Harbid, the commander of the Northern Division of the Islamic Jihad. On your screens right now are the aerial images of the latest missile attacks that killed the senior Palestinian commander. Israel says that Harbid was behind several missile terror attacks against Israeli citizens, and that he consistently led rocket launches against Israel, as well as shooting attacks on Israeli soldiers. In retaliation, Gaza fired 3 rockets at the Israeli city of Ashdod. As per the police, 3 people have been slightly injured in the attacks. The conflict between Israel and Gaza has entered its second week, and dozens of lives have been lost, yet there is no end to the violence, even as world leaders call for a ceasefire. Israel's latest strikes come after Gaza launched rocket attacks on the Israeli cities of Beersheba and Ashkelon. Residents in Gaza say that they were awakened by the heaviest barrage of airstrikes on Monday. They say that the intensity surpassed the deadly Sunday strikes, the one which left 42 people dead. The IDF has said that they destroyed more than 15 kilometers of militant tunnels in a heavy airstrike and destroyed the homes of 9 Hamas commanders. The number of casualties from the latest strikes remain unknown. In the last 2 weeks, Israel has carried out hundreds of airstrikes across Gaza, and militants have launched more than 3,100 rockets into Israel. Nearly 200 Palestinians have been killed in the airstrikes, including 58 children. 8 people in Israel have been killed in rocket attacks launched from Gaza, including a 5-year-old boy and a soldier. Now, residents in Israel and Gaza say that they are bracing themselves for a severe, long, drawn-out conflict as Palestinian militants and Israeli forces continue their exchange of fire. Cross-border violence has dramatically escalated in the past few days with no signs of letting up from either side. The death toll is rising from what is now being called the worst escalation of hostilities between Israel and Palestine in years. And diplomacy has so far failed to quell the rising violence. And as for residents living in this volatile region, each day is like a war itself.
This round of war is the hardest than the last one. I can tell that my little child is in a panic attack. I need to take her outside to breathe, to be cool. I always talk to her. I try to. We don't hear news at home because she is very frightened. We stay all the family in the basement. We sleep there together, but my little children is very, very frightened, and I need to take care of with medicine.
More than 2,800 rockets have been launched by Hamas and other armed Palestinian groups into Israel this week alone. Dozens of buildings have been flattened with aerial bombardments on both sides of the border. Sarit Wiesman, a 27-year-old Israeli beautician, had just put shampoo in her hair when the rocket sirens went off. The rocket, one of the hundreds launched from Gaza Strip on Friday, struck next door, destroying her neighbor's house in the Israeli border town of Sderot. Fortunately, she survived the attack unharmed.
אני לא יכולה לחשוב מה היה קורה אם חלילה והייתי נשארת שם. גם פחדתי, כי אני בחודש שלישי להיריון שלי, שחלילה ולא יקרה לי משהו, אז רצתי ישר כאילו לפינה שם של הסלון.
Envoys from the United States, United Nations, and Arab nations have started to initiate negotiations between Israel and Palestine. Nearly 200 have been killed in the conflict since last Monday. Israel has reported 10 deaths so far. Now here's a story of survival from Gaza. A 6-year-old girl was reunited with her father after rescuers pulled her out of the rubble of her damaged home. It was nothing short of a miracle when rescuers found Susie under the debris. She was trapped for several hours, covered in dust, and too weak to raise her head. Susie wept as she was taken to an ambulance. The girl was reunited with her father in the hospital. Doctors say that she was bruised but had not sustained serious injuries. Her house was destroyed on the deadliest day of Israeli airstrikes on Gaza since fighting erupted last week. Susie and her father are the only survivors in the family. Her mother and all her 4 of her siblings were killed in the bombing.
اللحظات الأخيرة إني أنا كنت وزوجتي قاعدين في الصالون وعمال بننيم البنات. عددهم 3 بنات وولدين. حطيناهم في غرفة آمنة. ربما إنه يكون في قصف في الشارع يكونوا بعيدين عنا. زعل الدنيا كلها بكفينيش فيش مكان يكفيه. ولكن لما سمعت إنه في بنت من بناتي عايشين قلت الحمد لله رب العالمين، لأنه هذه البنت يمكن تنسيني حاجة ولو بالقليل من يعني بسمة بناتي، لأنه هي أخته.